Welcome to another podcast with Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization. Today, we're talking about Northern California Bigfoot sightings. We have with us today special guest, Bobby Reich, not Reich, Rich. If you guys watched the Bigfoot sighting report that I did on location near where he had some of his sightings, I mispronounced his name. I called him Reich, and this is Bobby Reich. And we've got Derek Wright, Jenny Higley, and I'm really excited to talk about the #2 location in the world for Bigfoot sightings. I just love the area. It's really squatchy. Even the closest town is a good drive away. Really sucks to get into this area camping and forget something because you got a long haul to get in and out. It's, you know, a damn near a whole day deal getting in and out of there. So I would like to start off by, you know, we went there last year and we went to Pittville Road, and it was a Bigfoot sighting report, and there are several of them in the area, but there was one actually back in there near a place called Bridge Creek. And we went back in, took a look around, did the Bigfoot sighting report, and then I don't know, it was probably 6 months later, Bobby gave us an email and said, you know, hey, that's where me, my dad, and Grandpa's Bigfoot sightings were, in the same location, you know, and so that's pretty exciting when you've got so many people seeing Bigfoot in one area. And I know most of Bobby's were right back there in Bridge Creek. And you talk about in one of your Bigfoot sightings about the type of trees back in there. I believe they're the ones that look like the bark's peeling away and there's some type of rubber underneath. I can't remember the name of those. What those are?
Manzanita.
Trees. Okay, we obviously didn't get back in there far enough because we didn't come across those manzanita trees. So
they're bushes.
Oh, they're bushes.
Yeah, they get about 12 feet high or so.
Okay.
Up to. I'm sure if I looked in your video, I could see some. They're probably short ones where you were.
Oh, okay. So we were around some of them then. All right. Yeah. Okay, and one of the Bigfoot sightings that you had that intrigues me the most, I mean, they all intrigue me. They were all pretty exciting. But the one where I believe it was you and your sister, and you guys were standing in the back of the truck and leaning forward onto the cab of the truck while your dad and someone else was driving?
Yeah, that was my last encounter.
Now, you got a pretty good look at the face?
Yes, I did.
And do you remember some of the features?
Oh, yeah.
Of what it looked like? See, I've never had a Bigfoot sighting, so.
No, really?
No, I've never seen anything out in the open and clear enough to be able to make that claim. So, you know, it's nice to talk to someone like you that has seen one really well, so you can tell me what I'm looking for.
Well, the guy that I saw that was up there, you want me to tell the story?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Go for it. Okay, this is my last encounter. It was 1 mile from my 4th encounter, and exactly 1 year later. It was 1982. I was a senior. I just graduated high school, and we were on the east side of the hill. Are you familiar with Eagle Lake? Did you go that far?
No.
No, we did not.
It's the mountain or the plateau-ish area that you're on for where Bridge Creek is. If you follow it out to the east about 3-4 miles, it goes up a little bit more. Not very high or steep, but there's a mountain, or it's a mountain or giant plateau that you're actually on there, and it drops about 2,000 feet to a lake below. It was Eagle Lake, and we were there. I just got something that popped up on my screen. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. We were there driving headed south on this road. It's on the edge of that mountain looking down at the lake, about a 45-degree angle. My sister was on the passenger side. I was on the driver's side. We were in the back of the truck with our bows up on top of the cab. I was watching downhill, and she's looking up. And this was an old burn area, so everything was growing back. Manzanita, probably 4 or 5 feet high, and trees that were roughly 15 feet high, sparse on my side. It was more heavy on her side of the hill. And we were driving along, and I happened to glance over at her side, and I saw a spring coming up out of the water. It was like a water faucet had just been turned on. It was just right off the bank. It was like a 6-foot bank where it was cut because it was so steep. And then it went up to the hill. And this was only like 2-3 feet back from the edge. And it was shooting straight up about 8-10 inches and going right back down. But instead of coming off the edge, it was going right back on the ground. And about 50 yards down the road, I was looking down my side, and there were some big trees coming up. And since it's only one lane and they're hanging over the road, you got to look to see if you duck or put up your arm to block the branches so you don't get swiped off.
Right.
And I, before we got there, I glanced over to look. We're like 35 yards from it, and right there, 10 feet off the road, right behind a tree that was like 15 feet tall, it was standing right at the edge of the big trees that hadn't burned. And it had the top of the tree pulled over, and I saw from like right here up on its face, it had a limb that was right here, and I saw its left shoulder because it had the top of the tree just pulled over looking, and it looked like it was in shock. It looked like it had its head tilted back, and its eyes were huge, wide open, like we startled it or scared it. And we locked eyes, and it was maybe 3 to 5 seconds, and then I looked away downhill. I looked back at it, and it had let loose of the tree, and that thing's just rocking back and forth like this. And I seen between that tree it was behind, there was another one probably 10 feet away. There was a gap in between it, and I seen the body from like the elbow up and the knees forward, down on all fours. And I always thought it was a baby that had jumped off of it trying to get away. That was before I knew anything about them. And it was black, jet black, with silver back that I seen, in between the trees. And then I backed up. By that time, we were like 20 yards from it, and I backed up to my sister, and I wasn't looking. I didn't want to look down when I came there because I thought that thing was still standing there. And when we got to that spot, I gave it a quick look, and there was nothing there. It was like a 10-foot clearing between that tree and the big trees, and it ran for about probably 30, 40 yards down, and it was gone. It was just manzanita. There was nothing standing there. But
Is that your closest sighting in the area?
Yeah.
What did its face look like? A human, or did it look more like a gorilla? Or
it had a gorilla's face. It was exactly like a gorilla. Where it's from, like the forehead all the way around the face. Well, other than the lips, I couldn't see the lips. But all the way around the face, it was that grayish black color, just like a gorilla. It had everything like a gorilla except for the nose. The nose was different. I couldn't see the exact shape of it, but you could see big nostril holes from where it had its head tilted back.
Oh.
And it had jet black hair. It was short, well groomed hair, and then I could see the left shoulder sticking out on the other side of the tree down to about the elbow. And looking at him from where the edge of the elbow was to the center of his face was at least 2.5 to 3 feet. So this guy was at least 5.5 to 6 feet wide at the shoulders. He was huge and about 10 feet tall.
Whoa, that's huge.
Yeah, when we got to spot, I was standing in the back of the truck, and he was probably, with the incline, probably 2 feet lower than the truck, standing there, and where he was up, where he would have been up on that tree was at least 10 feet tall. He was still taller than me when I drove by in the back of the truck.
What I'd really like about that encounter is Bigfoot always tries to keep something between you, it and what it's observing. All the sightings I've studied and stuff, it tries to keep something between it and its prey, it and what may be a threat. I don't know. I'm sure they see people as a threat.
And or whatever it's actually observing, if you want to know just right down to it. I think that more often than not, they're just sitting there watching us a lot more than we absolutely know.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I agree.
I think that guy was going back that 50 yards behind me to that water spouts bordering out of the ground to get a drink. That's where
probably.
I think what he was doing. It was like 3:30 in the afternoon when I saw him.
That makes sense.
I'd have to say I am the one member of RMSO that has actually seen a Squatch, but my encounter pretty much about the same time frame that a lot of your encounters happened, closer to the later one. In fact, what I believe the encounter you described, early 80s, around 82 or so, mine was in 81, but it was literally like 1:30 in the morning, and it was just dark, and the only reason why it just stands out is because it had come out of a park and had crossed down underneath a street light, and I had caught the actual silhouette of just this massive, just a massive individual walking, and I caught the hair going all the way down. I still see it in my mind of this thing walking right at me. Me and my buddy had just ditched it down into we were in an orchard. It was the edge of an actual apple orchard that we had just jumped down into some weeds and stuff just to kind of hide, because we saw something coming and knew somebody was coming, but hell, I was 10 years old, so we were kind of just ditched it, just kind of avoiding whatever the heck it was or whoever it was, and this thing walked within 5 feet of me. But that late at night, there's no way I could have got any that type of detail that you saw out of this thing, but I could imagine what I can still visualize, how much that just embedded in my mind that you actually have that much detail that you actually get to see every time it hits that mind's eye. That's a pretty cool experience, actually. I
would have loved to see the whole body, but at that time, there's absolutely no way I wanted to see the whole body. In my mind, they did not exist up there until that fifth encounter. After that, I quit hunting. This year I just turned in for my deer tags, handicap tag for this year. I haven't hunted since that sighting, so this will be my first deer yak. I get to use a crossbow instead of a bow and arrow, though.
Oh,
okay.
Nice.
That reminds me of... Go ahead.
But it will not be by myself. Not at all.
Have you ever thought about just the whole... every one of those encounters that you go through is all within about a 5 or a 6 year period or span, and I wish you would have continued doing what you're doing, because honestly, I don't believe you were ever in danger. But at the time, you never know. You see something, that weighs 900 pounds and 10 feet tall. That's probably something you don't necessarily want to run into all the time, even though we go out of our way to. But did you ever think that you actually probably had a family within that area that was literally living and existing in that area? That time frame is just so close together that it tells me you have a habitat there, or had a habitat there at the time.
Yeah, I think they're still there. My cousin's seen them, but he won't tell me the story. He's just told me that it sounds like he's had more than one encounter with them. He lives up there, and he will flat out doesn't want to talk about it. So how
far is this away from where you grew up? Because you were obviously a teenager throughout most of this happening. So
as a crow flies, probably 250 miles. It takes roughly 5 to 6 hours to get there, depending on what type of vehicle you're driving.
It's a pretty different. I was hoping you had some other stories from just living close by, but you have family that live up there.
Yeah, one of them I would like to hear more about is the time that you believe you had two. You may have seen two from your tree stand. You brought up bow hunting, and I believe you were bow hunting on that one and injured your finger, and you kind of had to be pulled out of bow hunting for several days. And when you finally got into your stand, you had some type of a Bigfoot encounter.
Yeah, that was my scariest. That was 1981. It was exactly 1 mile roughly down the road from my last encounter where I saw it face to face. And 1 year prior, this was 1981, I was a junior in high school. We had already been up there for 2 weeks of deer hunting. And when we were up there, we went into a new area, which was that drop-off area I told you about to the lake. And we were over there hunting, and I saw this tree stand up in a tree, and it was right on the edge of the road, and right in front of it was a pond from that was made from the snow runoff. And so I decided, you know, we're going to be up there at the very last of the hunting season, 3 of us, and I would have my own vehicle, and I'd be able to go sit there. So we came back up there, me, my uncle, and my brother-in-law, and I had a 3-wheeler, so I drove it to the tree stand. It was uneventful the first day. I had deer I took pictures of, squirrels, chipmunks, birds. Second day I went there, just before I got to the stand, I hit some buckbrush, and it drove a thorn, they're probably about that long, into my knuckle right here. And I got up into the tree stand. I mean, literally a quarter mile from my tree stand. So I got up there and I got my knife and I tried to kind of slit, put it back, push it back through so I could get it, and it just drove it straight deeper into my knuckle, and then it got stuck like this. So I couldn't pull my bow. It was hurting, so I got down, went back to camp, waited for them to come back. They took me to the hospital, and they did X-rays, and they kept slicing and slicing and slicing. They couldn't find it because it doesn't show up on the X-ray, and then they finally found it and pulled it out. So now I'm in a sling like this, and so the last day I get up there, I park my 3-wheeler about 100 yards down the road so I can see it. If I turn my head, I can still see it. Nobody can steal it. And again, this is like 3 to 3:30 in the afternoon, and I'll give you a layout of what it looked like. Behind me were some tall trees, the ones that didn't burn in the fire. It went back about 100 yards, and then it dropped off in that 45-degree angle down to the lake. And if you're sitting in the stand, you got about a football field and a half of clear cut. The trees are probably only a foot tall at this point, and the brush growing. It's fairly new. On my right side, I'm sitting about 20 feet from a tree line that's not very deep, and there's another clear cut on the other side. On my left, you got about 35, 40 yards, maybe 50, to the other trees that are still the old growth that is deep woods. It continues on. And then at the very end, there's this short hill that goes up like 150 feet and then plateaus back off. So I parked my 3-wheeler, I walked to the stand, and I decided, you know, I better do my business before I get up there. So I walked back into behind where the stand is, where I didn't think anything was going to be coming from. Walked back in there, did my business, buried it, walked back to my tree, climbed the tree, and just as I turned around and was sitting down, I had this roar. It was like a lion, but with the T-Rex intensity, like you watch Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Just right there, I froze. I was continuing sitting down. I froze, couldn't move, and I knew this thing's right behind me, so I very slowly turned my head and looked, and the trees, the limbs blocked my view. All I could see was to the other edge of the road, and I couldn't see anything, and it was standing right just beyond that, but it could see, I'm sure, the lower half of my body moving, and it was standing there. I just froze. And I kept watching there, and about 15 to 20 minutes later, all of a sudden it did it again, but this time it was in front of the stand on my left-hand side, where it's like 40, 50 yards to the big trees, and it was in the big trees just before it went up that hill. So I concentrated my vision there. I figured, it had circled around me, and so I was sitting there watching that. All of a sudden, in my peripheral vision, I caught a tall black figure stepping off the road into the deep woods. I turned and looked. There's nothing there. It was already in the woods. And so now I know there's two of them there. But at the time, it's not Bigfoot. Bigfoot didn't live there in my mind.
Now, there's a drop-off that goes down like 1,000 feet back in there. There's like a canyon or a chasm.
It's we're sitting on the top of that bluff ridge, the Big Creek area. Big Creek. It's like a huge, tall plateau way up there, a mountain, and then it drops off a couple thousand feet to a lake.
Okay.
And so, anyways, I see that figure step in. I know there's two of them, and in my mind, it's the only thing it could be was a bear. But bears don't stand up, and they're not 9-10 feet tall, walking. But Bigfoot didn't live there. So I've waited about 1 hour, and there was no movement. There's no sounds. There's no birds. There's no squirrels, chipmunks, or anything. And nighttime was coming, and I did not want to be there when nighttime fell. Nobody would come looking for me until they got done. So I waited that hour, and I got out of that tree as quick as I could, just dropped to the ground and ran for the ATV. And I didn't look in the woods or anything. I just got on it and got out of there. That was number 4.
I've got a question about the area. You've spent some time in the area hunting and so forth, and we didn't see these when we were in the area, but when we started Bigfooting seriously, not all the spots, but a lot of spots, we started finding structures, like especially the teepee structures, the large ones made out of large logs and stuff that were obviously relocated logs and so forth. And we started doing a GPS study of them. And I just want to know, I mean, if you haven't, that's cool, but have you ever seen any of these structures in the area? Did you kind of got an idea of what I'm talking about? I think I've got some pictures of those.
I know what you're talking about. At the time, I knew nothing about Bigfoot. I didn't know anything about structures. I ran across one. I thought somebody was crazy and built a fort on top of the mountain. It was you were at the actual Bridge Creek campsite, right, where the spring comes up out of the ground?
We did not get to the Bridge Creek campground, no.
Oh,
we drove about, I don't know, I think it was about 10 miles down Pittville Road, and we did not make it to a campsite.
Okay. It was right after you filmed that. They stuck up a gate, so we couldn't camp there anymore. But 1/4 mile directly south of there, it was probably my sophomore year in high school, me and a friend went up there with everybody else camping, and I took my truck up this back road that was a really old road. It already had like 4 to 5 foot pine trees growing in it, and just drove over them. We drove as far as we could, then we walked up to the top of the hill behind camp, and there was this clearing towards the top that was probably half a football field size, and right at the edge that we were coming up to, the end of it, there were some big game trails coming right there, and probably 20, 25 yards away from the edge of the tall trees to out in this clear cut or clearing, there was a tree that was like 8 to 10 inches around, a pine tree that had been broken off about 2 feet above the ground. The trunk was still attached to the stump, and it had been placed on a rock that was about 2.5 feet tall, the top end of it. All the branches were cleared off underneath it. The side that I was facing were cleared off, and all the branches on the top were cleared off, but the far side still had the branches on the ground. And it had taken sticks and stuff that were probably this big around, and big chunks of bark that were broken off to fit that 2.5 feet tall height underneath the log. They had stuck it all up against it, made a fort, and there was an opening at both ends. And I always thought, always stuck in my mind, this is crazy. Why would somebody be 26 miles out in the middle of nowhere and make a fort on top of the mountain? And then after listening to all the people talk about structures and stuff, then in the last year or two, wow, this is what I saw. This is what it was. But I'm
when we
sure
first
it was like
started
an ambush shelter.
structures, we thought, it was just kind of a coincidence, and maybe some people did come back in 8 miles off a trail and built these, because it would be a great thing to throw some tarp around, and then you've got yourself a makeshift teepee. But when we really started taking it seriously is when we would find these on inclines. You got a 35, 45 degree slope or whatever it is, and there's a structure there. Well, that's about the most uncomfortable situation to camp. I would hate to have to try and sleep or camp on a hillside like that. So that's kind of when we're like, maybe we should start GPSing these and studying them. So, we're going into our 5th season of studying these. So that's one of the questions I have in an area once people have been seeing them, are these structures, is there some relation, because there's still a lot of questions in my mind, maybe it's not Bigfoot related, maybe it is, but we find them in Bigfoot sighting spots quite often.
Yeah.
So the one that you saw looked more like maybe an ambush type situation, like they could hide in it maybe to get some game or whatnot.
Yeah, I've been thinking that, and then somebody else gave me another idea. But I figured since those game trails came right to that spot, that was probably an ambush shelter. But somebody else suggested that it could be like a daybed for young ones, because a big one would have had a very hard time getting in these openings on either end. But they referred me to a video that I seen, I don't remember the name of it, where it showed this mound in the middle of an opening that was just covered with pine needles, and the guy pulled a branch away from the end of it and crawled in it and supposedly saw a baby Bigfoot in the very back of it.
Oh.
So he suggested that it could have been a day hideout shelter for the young ones while the big ones went out and did things.
Yeah, we found up in this slot canyon a couple of weeks after we found some really good footprints. The camera captured something running up the hill and hiding from us. Derek did a breakdown on it. I mean, it was too inconclusive, even though it ran up the mountainside the same directions the footprints went. But when we come back a couple of weeks later up in this slot canyon, up on this perch, we found a big pine bough ground nest. And we called it a day nest because I couldn't imagine it being for anything else but for comfort during the day. We kind of believe in that area that they set up sentries at the mouth of the canyon, one of the only ways in. And I don't know, they're probably either there to warn about prey coming back or a threat, which is us, because a lot of times when we go into this area, when we're out at the trailhead just getting ready, we'll sometimes get wood knocks or a big whoop that goes back in the canyon. So it seems like the family or the pod, whatever you will, always has someone out there to warn everybody what's coming back in. And so this nest we found is in a perfect spot for that. They can see you, and then they can climb up on a plateau just like your one bow tree stand sighting. They can climb right up on top of this plateau from that perch. So yeah, that's the gist that we got, is it was a day nest. It wasn't something that they spend a lot of time in, but made it real comfortable. And we didn't intend to climb up to it, but we seen a tree down at the mouth of the slot canyon had been destroyed, and there was a mess of pine needles and little branches and stuff, all fresh, leading up to the nest, and it just led us right to this massive thing. And some of the pine boughs in this, I just don't think the local birds in the area are making a nest out of some of these large branches that it hauled up there.
Or you wouldn't want to meet them.
No, because they're the size of a human or bigger.
That kind of reminds me, because in the same relative location, just deeper down that canyon, just recently we came across a tree that had fell uphill. So it had just come down uphill, and it looked like something had literally taken and just snapped off every one of the branches into littler pieces, and it looked literally like a big old bedding site that something had been laying down there. And this was how long ago, Kelly? I mean, we're just talking
about a month ago.
About a month ago that we come across it. So, and it was still growing. I mean, everything that was broke, it almost looked like it had shattered and blew up. But it was all in one big pile. I wish it was in a bed. It was in the dark. So we
were using our
see it in the day, actually. So.
We were using our night video cameras, and we don't have a camera that takes photos at night. Otherwise, we would have some photos of it.
Well, that one time, Derek, when we were back in the canyon, you found what looked like an ambush tree stand, just like Bobby's talking about. Right before we hit Mirkwood, it's where that tree is standing on its side, and then they have taken and woven in sticks and branches all along the side so they can hide behind it right along that trail.
Yeah,
and that's where the canyon
right off the trail,
it's a choke
too.
point.
Yeah.
Right there.
So it's a great place for an ambush predator, and then the freshwater springs right there at that choke point. So it's a great place if you're an ambush predator. So, I mean, you sit there and suspect, did something make this on purpose? And you remember I think Jenny just mentioned that all the sticks that were staged, ready to add into it when we found it. I don't know. I remember it clearly. There was a good pile of sticks, and it didn't look like they were for firewood. It looked like they were to put into this ambush structure, but it's the placement of it. I mean,
well, they had it so
right near the water source where two valleys choke together.
Yeah, that's how the ambush shelter that I found. You guys talked about that Bridge Creek where it comes up out of the ground. The spring comes up out of the ground, then it goes through the camp, and then around between two small mountains into a little valley and makes a swamp. This shelter was like a half mile straight down the hill to that swamp. So it was right there by water source.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I would like to share my little experience this year. About 5-6 weeks ago, the first week of April, when Jenny and I went back into Pittville to get some footage to do Bobby's Bigfoot sighting report that he sent us. I was setting up a time lapse. I wanted some clouds and everything to set up a time lapse. I like to set up a camera to run for an hour or so while I'm looking around an area, and who knows, maybe a Bigfoot will walk in front of my camera. But anyway, there wasn't any clouds out that day, and so I was just like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to do my time lapse. And then I saw a chemtrail, and so I'm like, that'll work. So I'm setting it up, and as you can see, this camera is not running, and at this point in time, and I took a picture of it, and I'm down on one knee setting it up, and bam, boom, 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 behind me. I mean, something large, and it scared the hell out of me, because the first thing that come to mind was, oh my God, a moose, and moose scare me. They're the most dangerous animal in North America. So I'm jumping up to my feet and whipping around with my heart just beating fast, thinking, oh man, is a moose charging me, and by the time I whip around, the boom, boom, boom of whatever's running had stopped. And I mean, it was close. It was within 20 yards. And I whipped around expecting to see something, and there is nothing there. and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, a moose, an elk, and I'm reaching for my mace, and I start walking in the direction of the boom, 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 and nothing. And then I got the creeps, like something's watching me, because I know something's there. I just heard it, and it's hiding and watching me. And I walked around the area for about 10 minutes and started filming. I turned my camera on at the time, and I believe during the video I did of Bobby's encounters, I talk about it a little bit, and after I talk about it, I'm showing the section where I walked around looking for it. And I didn't see any footprints, but we were in a pretty firm soil with a lot of grass and a lot of organic matter on the ground. But, I mean, you could almost feel the ground, boom, 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 with each one of its steps. And, well, anyway, it scared the hell out of me. I'm not saying it was Bigfoot, but in my experience, a moose, an elk, a deer, they keep on going, and or they freeze and stare at you, but you coming towards them, they'll a lot of times take off unless it's a raunchy moose, and then he'll come at you. So there was nothing there. It upset me. And then talking to Bobby, was telling me, he's like, well, may have been a deer, but there's no elk or moose in that area. So, you know, and it's the sound of it sounded bigger than a big deer, but I didn't see it, so I don't know what it is. And you know, we're in a Bigfoot sighting hotspot. More than Bobby and his family has seen Bigfoot in this area. You know, it was a Bigfoot sighting that was unrelated to Bobby's that brought us into the area, and then he saw our video and said, hey, you know, that's where mine was. So I consider the area a Bigfoot sighting hotspot. I've heard a lot of people say, yeah, I've seen Bigfoot there, but they won't give me their story. You know, some people will give you their story and want to stay, you know, they want to be unnamed. Others, like Bobby, is like, sure, I'll tell my story, and yeah, you can use my name. And then other people are like, yeah, I saw it, but don't use my name, don't use my story.
So, Bobby, most of these actual encounters, it seems like, are pretty much late summer, maybe early fall, or were they all pretty much all in the summer? Pretty much August time frame?
Yeah, my 4 encounters right there were the opening day of, or the opening of archery season, which was mid-August. It's like always the second or third Saturday into August. So right dead center in August. And my dad's sighting was there at that time as well, in that time frame. And then my very first encounter was not there. It was in above Sonora, California, where we'd go camping. That was in July of '76, just before we went up there. And they were all at the elevation of about 6,000 feet.
Okay. So it sounds to me like just from that right there, the August time frames when we need to make our plans for going back in there, but we need to probably beat that hunt. Is there any hunting going on prior to that archery, or is that kind of...
No, that's the start of the hunting season there.
That is what I would figure. So we really need to actually plan it sometime the first or second week of August to get back in there.
It wouldn't matter if you hunted, if you went up there during the archery season. The only people that hunt that zone is my family during that time. So
that'd be fine either way.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of thinking outside of the box, because if I show up there in hunting season, I can't put my drone in the air.
Oh.
Really? Why?
Absolutely. For the fact that hunting's going on, and if somebody perceives that we're utilizing that technology for the hunt, that's a fine, and that's just not something I want to, even though we're not up there for that purpose. I don't want somebody to come, or, you know, or it become a problem, especially with newer drone laws going out there, and I don't want to be a cause of one more negative mark on us that fly these things. So that would be my 2 cents on it. So, and I personally would like to get a drone up in this area and get an overview of it all.
I would show you an area where we had I had my the structure, my dad's sighting, and my samurai chatter were all right there on that. We call it Buck Hill. It's right behind our camp, on the top of that mountain. That would be the best spot for you to fly a drone to look around.
That would be so exciting to go to
I
that
look
place
forward to
again.
it. Absolutely look forward to it. So we're going to be.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, what I really like about that, where you guys did that Pittville Road story, the one that it made me contact you, that story, word for word, matches my dad's encounter. But
Really?
yours was a few years later. It was 1 mile down the road from Pittville Road from Bridge Creek Camp.
Right.
And my dad said his sighting, him and my grandfather were coming back from town, just like the story. And they were about a mile from camp, and my dad said, "Oh, there's one," and he hit the brakes, and he thought what he saw was a deer from the color, because it was buff colored, or just like the deer there. And when he looked, he said it was just like the Patterson-Gimlin film. It was walking, instead of going to the right, it was going to the left. And he said it turned around and looked back over his shoulder, just like the Patty film. When it did that, he gunned it and got out of there. And they went back the next day, the men in camp, and looked for tracks, but it's so rocky and the little lava rocks that there's no way to find a print. But it was buff color, exactly like your story, except my dad's was 6 foot tall, yours was 8 foot tall. It was like 10, 15 years later, I think is when your story
could have been the same one that it grew. Yeah.
Yes. That's what it was. That was so intriguing. That was so intriguing to me. That wow, this guy, somebody a few years later in the exact same spot saw the same thing, and it was 2 feet taller at the time.
Yeah, and it's amazing what we've been doing. You know, I haven't had any sightings, but these areas that are Bigfoot sighting hotspots we go into, we've started finding some footprints. I mean, the first several years of Bigfooting, we didn't find diddly, but there's a couple areas we started finding stuff in, so of course we go to those more often. And a lot of times when we find footprints, we've found out that there's usually more. This rogue Sasquatch idea, rogue Bigfoot that I had in my head is completely wrong. I'm sure there's a couple of loners out there, but I think they're in small family units. And we have experienced or witnessed a member of one of the groups that we go into in a place we call Sasquatch Canyon in Utah. We've witnessed one of the members growing. Actually the smallest one. One of the members of this pod has a set of 14-inch footprints similar to Patty's. And we, more often than not, will sometimes find these 7-inch footprints of like a child around it. And this one that leaves the 14-inch footprints, when we've tracked, and I'm going to say her because we think it's a female now, she'll put her right hand down sometimes, especially on steep sections that we've tracked her. She'll put her right hand down, and we're thinking it's maybe because she has something in her left hand like a child. And there's certain parts where she'll set the child down because all of a sudden its footprints appear. And then it's like a kid on that's ADT. I mean, you can tell it's rolling around, tearing bark off of trees, making these little mini structures. I mean, usually we find like a host pine tree, and they'll stick these deadfall logs that they relocate up into the host tree. And this, where we find the baby footprints around the mother, it'll make these mini ones, and it'll put it in like a 2 or 3 foot tall pine tree and stick a bunch of 1.5 foot sticks up in it, like it's copying the adults, except for it's not as good as the adults. I've noticed the adults usually keep their structures made like on the northeast side is where they put all the sticks, but this youngster will just make them any which way it wants. But the first year we started finding its footprints. The next year when we ran into the mother and tracked her for a while, we found the baby's footprints again, and this time they were sunk in so deep. They were some of the nicest footprints that I have found really small. I've got those on film on one of my Bigfoot expeditions, but it had grown. You know, it's with its mom, and instead of the 7 inches it had the year before, it's got 8-inch footprints. So it starts bringing home to you that, you know, you're following a living, growing family, and that they're social creatures. I mean, it just may be a small family or a small pod, but to me, they're more social than they are loners. Just in what I've observed.
That was kind of interesting. You said the northeast side. Is the north side of a tree or the hill? Because that structure I saw was on the east, kind of north side of that hill by camp.
And the one that you explained sounds like it's an ambush type structure. The teepee structures that we're finding that we believe may be territorial structures where they use a host tree, we're usually finding that they're placing the logs on the northeast side. I'll show you one of them that's completely northeast side. And what's really creepy about this structure is we found a human shoe or boot at the bottom of this structure. Which
but really old.
Yeah, very, very old, and it's just one boot, and it's a size 5 army boot, size 5 men's, and it's just weird to me that someone would lose a shoe and walk back with just one shoe.
And
so
we'll point out to this for you, Bobby. We did a night investigation of this place just the end of last fall before winter come in, and we actually were growled at. Literally almost standing right inside this structure right here. We were just coming up to it, and it's about a, 30-degree down slope hill to a creek down there at the bottom of the base of where this is. We heard something take off through the creek that we never caught a visual on, but when we got up here, something had growled at us just literally as we were getting up in here right at this structure. So kind of creepy, just to throw it out there. I mean, we get growled at quite a few times, and I know Jenny and Kelly both have heard that samurai chatter that you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's just kind of, you can't understand what it's saying. It just sounds like, you know, quiet mumbling going on, so to speak, in places that you
tell
just
it was
know it's not going to
communication.
happen.
So, I mean, there was 2 individuals that we were listening to up on the cliff top above us talking, and it was the same day that you did the breakdown of the thing that ran up the mountain and hid from us, Derek, and we found the really nice footprints in the snow. But yeah, about 50 feet above us on a huge plateau of habitat of trees and everything above us, yeah, we heard 2 individuals having a conversation, and this conversation lasted a minute or so. We didn't have a microphone powerful enough to pick it up, but we both heard it, and it was kind of creepy. Sounded like a language that I don't understand, but
So,
it definitely
Bobby,
sounded like communication.
When you heard yours, were there more than one voice, or was it one voice like talking to itself?
Talking to itself. I think it was mad at me because I've had the samurai chatter and I've been growled at, and both times we were on a drive. We would go to the top of a hill, half of us, and half of us would go down to a lower road, and the job of the people up above was to make noise coming down to push
The deer out.
Mm-hmm. And this was, the samurai chatter was right behind camp and on that hill by where I had that structure, and I was pushing through large old growth forest, and I went into a big area of manzanita I had to get through, and making all sorts of racket to get push deer down. And then when I cleared the manzanita, I went into a bunch of trees that had been planted after a burn, but they hadn't cleared them out yet, and they were probably 25 to 30 feet high, and they were probably 2.5, 3 feet apart. It was like so dark in there. I was scary to go in there, but I was in it had to go to it to get the road below, and when I was about halfway in it, all of a sudden that samurai chatter started behind me. It was probably 25, 30, 35 yards behind me in the brush. You could hear it just like the Tasmanian devil. And I was walking from north heading south, and it was going from east heading west, and it was inside the manzana. I couldn't see it, but you could follow the sound until it went out of sound range. I'm pretty sure it was swearing and cussing at me for waking it up. This was like about 10:30 in the morning, and the same for my growl. It was the same situation. Walking, pushing noisily down, and I got into from Manzanita, from Old Growth through Manzanita and into a clear cut, and I got growled at from the same way, and I flip around. There's nothing there. It didn't growl again. It just did it once, but it was so vibrating, just shook your body. There was no bear that would do that up there, and so I'm sure it was sitting there watching me. And I moved from the edge of the trees to the center, so it'd be safer. And then I saw my uncle over in the next clear cut over. I saw him, and then I figured I was safe, so I walked on down. But yeah, I've been growled at and samurai chattered at, but I'm sure they were mad at me because it was purposely making noise, and supposedly they go up high to sleep, and I was at the high point making noise, disturbing them, and they were letting me know it.
Did you guys pick up on how he explained the whole roar, the growl that happened, and how he referred it to almost exactly as how you guys referred to what you guys heard, as almost a T-Rex going off?
Not only
a lion and a T-Rex.
That's exactly how we described it. We actually caught one of those on camera at the 77 structure location, the very last structure that I put up that I was showing you guys. Yeah, we captured that same vocalization there on camera. Excuse me.
Yeah,
we also heard it at the bombing location. If you guys want to watch our bombing expedition video, at the beginning of the video, Jenny and I get there and we're setting up camp, and across the river from us, I believe it was the Wisdom River, we started getting elk bugling, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. Let's record that. I will record us setting up camp and do a time lapse of it, and then we'll also capture those elk vocalizations." So I set up the camera, we start setting up, and about 5 minutes after I set up the camera, maybe not even that, something on the mountainside just roars. I mean, roars like a lion, and I've never heard a bear make a roar like that. And the birds went crazy and took off, and the elk left the area, and the whole week we were there, we didn't see elk in the area again or hear another elk bugle. Whatever made that roar sent the elk off. And then that night, Jenny kept waking me up because something kept on walking back and forth the opposite side of the river as our tents, and kept on making mouth pops.
What's that, Jen?
It even walked in the river at one point and up where we were at, right in our camp. So I was quite frightened, and I kept waking Kelly up. There's something out there. There's something out there. And he's like, "Shut up! I'm trying to sleep."
And what I'd like to point out, I mean, I know this happened 125 years ago, but that's what brought us into the location. Teddy Roosevelt writes about the bombing, trapping guy, his partner, getting killed by what's today would be described as a Bigfoot. But when they first spotted the creature, it was across the river from where they were camping, and it was pacing around, making a ruckus, in my opinion, doing everything to intimidate them, to make them leave its territory. And so that kind of happened to us. We had it roar across the river before nightfall, and then after nightfall it kept marching back and forth on the opposite side of the river, making mouth pops. Now, I'm not saying it was a Bigfoot. Bears also make mouth popping noises too.
Yeah.
Crazy. The
Absolutely.
ones in the area that where we camp up there deer hunting, I think they are well versed in seeing us because my family's been going up there every year for about 70 some years,
Oh.
and
Several generations.
they've seen us grow up. So I think they're well versed in us. They've never bothered us. The only time that it's ever been threatening is when I peed in front of it. That one that roared at me in the tree stand.
That makes sense.
I'm marking his territory.
Yeah.
You peed in his territory.
But none of them have ever done anything to. They've never came into camp. They've never bothered us. They always seem to stay away from us. But I think they are watching us while we're there and are very familiar with who we are and that we don't threaten them.
When we familiarize
let me point
ourselves
something out real quick first. Let me point something out real quick of what he just said there. I think most viewers would look back at your sighting reports, and you've had 5 or 6 different encounters with this. I think most of them are going to say, yeah, they don't stay away from you.
No.
No, it's just like people. When you become familiarized with something, you become more comfortable. You like when we Bigfoot in a brand new area, and it's kind of a spooky area, and you're like on guard, and you hear every noise and stuff. You know, you start coming back year after year. You become familiarized and more comfortable and relaxed. And I think that just like Bobby says, they become familiarized with his family, and they got to the point where they were letting their guard down. It's like, hey, we've been seeing these guys every year for 70 years. They're done no harm to us. They get down their guard. They get seen. They show themselves, and that's one of the reasons I like revisiting places. And I haven't given up on game cameras. I think if we keep game cameras in some of these hot spots long enough, they'll familiarize themselves with them, start to see them not as a threat, let down their guard, maybe make a mistake, and maybe we'll get them on game camera. And us frequenting these places, I'm hoping that they'll get familiar with us and give us a really good sighting.
Keep telling nice. Kelly he needs to start leaving old socks out there in the wilderness.
Yeah, an old sock or a T-shirt so they get familiar with our stank. Yep, I agree. Well, that's our hour. It went by pretty quick. I mean,
does wow, it's already been an hour?
Yeah. Anybody else have anything they want to add before I close this down?
Absolutely. Bobby, thank you very much for coming and sharing all this with us. I think we all appreciate you taking time out of your life to come and share these experiences with us.
Definitely. They're very interesting, and we're really excited to go back out there. And that'd be great if you could show us some of those spots.
Yeah,
would love to.
We've been out there twice, and it was just passing through on an afternoon both times that we've went out there. But we really want to go in there and camp and spend some time. We've scouted the area out, and that's usually how we start out an investigation. We scout out the area, find the good places to camp close to the Bigfoot sighting areas. But we have the actual person that has had these experiences and can get as close to them, so we would love to camp out there with you when we go out there. I appreciate your time and sharing your experience with us. A lot of people are afraid to share their Bigfoot experiences, so I really thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been therapeutic for me to do it.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Bobby.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, that's our podcast with Bobby Reich and Northern California Bigfoot Sightings. Keep on watching. We're going to keep on watching.